Great. Thank you very, very much, Naideepa, for your generous and kind and beautiful words. Thank you very much for that. Very heartwarming. So I'm going to go straight in. I'm going to read you one verse from the Dhammapada, but I'm going to read it in three translations. As I think you all know now, it's been translated at least 80 times into English. 80 times. Here are three translations. One should make haste in doing good deeds. One should restrain one's mind from evil, for the mind of one who is slow in doing good tends to take delight in doing evil. Be quick in doing what's admirable. Restrain your mind from what's evil. When you're slow in making merit, evil delights the mind. And the last translation. Be quick to do what is morally beautiful. Restrain the mind from evil. They who are sluggish in doing good, their mind delights in evil. So I'm mainly going to be referring to that last translation. Yeah, and this particular verse, so it's from the Dhammapada, a very well-known and much-loved Buddhist text. It's actually from chapter 9, the chapter on evil. Yeah, it's the chapter on evil. And this particular verse, I've had a long relationship with, almost 30 years. Yes, I've had a relationship with these words for 25 to 30 years, and they've been important to me, even extremely important to me, especially the first sentence. Yeah, especially the first sentence. So I'm actually going to start by talking about the second half of this verse, which goes, the first part goes, restrain the mind from evil. Yeah, it's a strong sentence. Yeah, there are two strong words in there, restrain and evil. I think inevitably, as human beings, we will experience what we could call evil. Okay, very strong word. Maybe we could also use the Buddhist word unskillfulness, a tendency, if you like, towards selfishness, a tendency towards irritation and ill will, and a tendency towards what we could call spiritual ignorance. We all experience, if you like, elements, sometimes, unfortunately, strong elements of evil. And that's part of the human condition. Yes, that's inevitable. We will all experience this, maybe even every day. And if we're practicing, of course, the spiritual life, the Buddhist spiritual life, we will come across aspects of our own behavior, aspects of our own mind, which, let's just put it politely, isn't very helpful. Yeah, the strongest word, of course, is this word evil. And of course, we'll experience varying degrees of evil, of unskillfulness. Sometimes it can be really strong. Sometimes it can be quite mild and subtle. I'm thinking of things like irritated and harsh speech. Yeah, we might need to restrain ourselves. There we are, we're talking with somebody, we're talking with a friend, or talking with a group of people, and we notice that we're getting irritated, and we may need to really watch the mind, watch what we do. We may need that extra restraint. Yes, restraint is a form of effort. Effort to avoid doing things that are unhelpful or harmful to other living beings. We need to watch that. It could be, and this is incredibly widespread in society, another way we might give expression to unskillfulness or evil is in terms of malicious gossip and slander. Yes, I'm sure we can all feel sometimes a pull to slandering people behind their backs, to saying bad things about people. And we will again need to watch that. We will need to, if we want to wake up, if we want to be skillful, we'll need to restrain ourselves, control ourselves, even to use that unpopular word. There could be in your life terrible situations or moments where you've allowed yourself to get into such a bad state. You might get so annoyed, so angry that you're considering punching somebody, yes, or hurting somebody physically. It can get that bad in moments. And of course, we need restraint. We don't want to do something that we'll be incredibly unhappy about, remorseful about later, and we don't want to really harm people. Yeah? And in those situations, we may need to leave the room, we may need to stop talking, we may need to restrain ourselves very strongly indeed, not to do something in 3 seconds that you may regret for the rest of your life. So we may need restraint in those sorts of situations. It may not, it could be any forms of violence. It could be punching, it could be using a knife, it could be using a hammer, it could be, extreme evil that we need to restrain ourselves from. Another form of evil, I think that's probably a good word actually, is taking from people what they do not want to give you. This is a widespread thing. Taking people's time and energy when you may have some idea or some sense that they don't want to give you that much time or energy, but you're sort of persisting. Maybe you're talking and talking and talking, which is fine if it's done with awareness, but you're not really allowing the other person to be a human being. You're not responding to them with sensitivity or with awareness. And we've all had that, we've all had that happen to us, but we've also sometimes, maybe regularly, done that, as it were, to other people. In those situations, we may need, again, to restrain ourselves, to hold ourselves back. Yeah? So I just wanted to just say a few words about that particular sentence, restrain the mind from evil. And the verse continues. It continues with the words, they who are sluggish in doing good, their minds delight in evil. So if we're slow to do wholesome things, if we're slow to make a helpful effort, if we're slow to focus on the lovely, naturally, of course, we'll focus on things that aren't so lovely, aren't so good, aren't so skillful. And then we can actually waste a lot of time. We can, as it were, go for what we could easily think of as inferior pleasures. Yeah, because we don't really want to make an effort to meditate. We don't really want to make an effort to do yoga or reflect on the Dharma or have a real conversation with somebody. We might want to spend lots of time watching TV. Okay, nothing wrong with watching TV, but if we can overdo it, and then we can, as it were, waste time and waste energy. And we can, as it were, delight in that. Delight's probably not a brilliant word, actually, but take a certain amount of pleasure in that. It could be, for example, you might sort of waste your time by watching loads and loads of porn. Yeah, that can happen. We can waste our energies in that way. Or you can waste time and energy on Instagram. You could spend 2, 3, 4 hours a day just flicking through Instagram. That's a lot of hours in a week. It's a lot of hours in a month and a lot of hours in 30, 40 years. Yeah, we don't need to waste and squander our energy in that way. YouTube, we might spend a phenomenal amount of time just sort of watching lots of stuff on YouTube, or the news for that matter. Again, nothing wrong with watching the news. I enjoy watching the news and following news events, but maybe sometimes we can spend too much time and energy on that, and it can have an effect on our mind. Yes, we might feel overwhelmed. We might feel depressed. We might feel somehow lacking in energy when we do that. It can demotivate us, for example. Yeah. It could be that if you're slow to do good, you might end up cultivating habits that aren't really good for you, or other people for that matter. For example, smoking more cigarettes. Yeah, you could spend a lot of your time smoking cigarettes, so you're spending money, quite a lot of money, quite possibly, and you're bringing poison into yourself, and also you're sharing the poison with the environment and maybe other people. Yeah, we could maybe even think of it as an evil activity. That's quite strong language. 1 or 2 smiles in the room. Alcohol. Yeah, if we're slow in doing helpful, creative, skillful things, we might, find inferior pleasure in drinking. Okay, nothing wrong with drinking, maybe in moderation. That could be fine. But if we drink too much, well, it can dull us, and it can have an effect on our health and our mindfulness. Well, not just cigarettes, alcohol, but also other forms of drugs. We might be in a habit of smoking loads of grass or dope on a quite regular basis. Well, this can dull our consciousness. It can dull our motivation in life, and also it can have a very negative impact on your sense of responsibility and connection with others. So if we're sluggish in doing good, our minds can naturally go to other activities which are, let's just call it, an inferior form of delight and pleasure. Okay, I'm going to turn to the first sentence, the sentence that most excites me about this verse. It's really my central love in this verse. And it goes, as you'll remember, be quick to do what is morally beautiful. Be quick to do what is morally beautiful. And I want to tell you about two experiences I had, one in the year 2000 and the other in 2001. In the year 2000 and the years leading up to that, I was mad about dancing. For a while, it's the only thing I was interested in was to dance. I would dance 2, 3, 4 times a week. And in 2000, I went to Holland to do a 5 rhythms kind of dance retreat. We danced for 6 hours a day, and part of the event involved sort of rituals and ceremonies, role plays, some writing, etc. And the retreat, I'll call it a retreat, the dance retreat, was focused around life cycles. Your cycles in life, being born, childhood, adolescence, middle age, and at the end, dying. And it's very strong, dancing for 6 hours a day. It really does release and gives expression to all sorts of energies and experiences and thoughts. And as part of this, at the end, we enacted our own deaths. We died, as it were, during this retreat. And we enacted our last moments in life, our last minutes of life, just with one other person there to witness us, to support us and hold our hand and maybe put their hand on our belly, etc. And after we died, we came back and we wrote, after we died, our own obituary. Obituary is it's not a common word. I don't really hear this word in Turkish. An obituary is maybe like a short or medium-sized article that can appear maybe in a newspaper about that person's life, who they were, what they achieved, what they did, etc. And we were also invited to write our own epitaph, which is the sentence or the words that's on your gravestone. So it's a very strong experience of writing about yourself after you died, and also writing what you would like to be on your gravestone. And we were invited, of course, as I recall. Well, what did we learn? What did we learn in this life? We were alive, we died, and we came back. What do we want to learn? Well, mine was clear, quite simple, quite straightforward in a way. The lesson was the crucial importance of expressing my love. Yeah, expressing my love. That was the single clearest, biggest lesson from dying and coming back to life, as it were. It was curious, actually, because you can imagine after going through this experience, it's a very sort of intimate and strong experience, but and people were silent and, of course, sort of interned. But there was another woman, part of another Buddhist, another spiritual tradition, and we did share a few words, and her lesson was identical, exactly the same. The year after, so it was 2001, I was extremely lucky because I was able to do a long solitary retreat in North Wales in the UK, a 6-month solitary retreat, and utter privilege to take 6 months out of your normal life and live just next to a forest and meditate lots. And I reflected a lot on death, dying, and also imperfection. I reflected almost every day for half an hour on both of these themes, either in stillness or on a walk or walking up and down. And during that retreat, I kind of realized, like an insight, that a non-action was a form of action. Not doing something is an action that has consequences. Not saying things, not expressing oneself is a form of action. And it occurred to me, or sometime afterwards it occurred to me, that it's obvious in a way that not expressing our love, our care, our sympathetic joy, our compassion, not expressing these is a powerful action, a powerful negative action. And I don't think it really occurred to me quite so strongly that a non-action is an action. Never telling somebody, never telling your son, for example, or your daughter that you love them in speech, maybe you keep on doing it through food, etc. It's a form of action, a harmful form of action. And that was really important. That was really important. The most important thing I really want to say this evening is that often when we have a response to an individual or a situation or the world, that often our first responses, our immediate responses are very noble, are very skillful, are very beautiful. And my central message is, I would love it if we trusted this first noble, skillful, loving, beautiful response. Yes, I'd love us to trust this and to honor this and even to revere this. Yeah, this is in the title. The title was Revering the Kalyana, or Reverencing the Kalyana. And Kalyana is a very rich word in Buddhism. It can be translated as good, it can be translated as lovely, it can be translated as charming, it can be translated as spiritual, and it can be translated also as beautiful. Yeah, so it's a very rich word. And it would just be wonderful, wouldn't it, if we learned to trust this response in us, trust our love, and to express our love. Wouldn't that just be fantastic? Fantastic. I'm not even particularly saying, of course, we do experience the other stuff. We do experience jealousy and irritation and frustration, greed, etc., etc. But if we can just be mindful and respectful about the skillful or the beautiful in us, and not just respect it or by feeling it, even more importantly than that, it needs communication. It needs expression. And the wonderful thing about expressing our love is that it broadens and deepens. Yes, a love expressed is love strengthened, love expanded. This is fantastic. We're extremely lucky that this is the case. When we express our love, love is born. More love is born in us and in other people around us, the people or the human, or the beings that we're sharing our love with. So we may have a very noble response to somebody's situation, maybe their difficulties, maybe their suffering, or even we may have a very noble response to their great happiness. Yes, we might feel great happiness in response to their great happiness. But what happens if we're slow? What happens if you want to give money to somebody or something? Let's say you thought, I know what, I will give them 200 lira. You may have that instant response. You might learn about their difficult situation, maybe especially these days in Turkey's a terrible economic crisis. And if you're a bit slow, you think, doubts might come into your mind. The second thought might come in, the third thought, the fourth thought might come in, and you think, maybe I'll give them 100 lira instead, because I don't, I've got a little, I don't, I need some money myself as well, and it's, I don't really want to give that much anymore. And you wait another few hours, and it drops to, well, maybe I should just give them 50 lira after all, 50 lira, and 2 days pass because you're really slow at this. You think, I think I'll just give them 20 lira in the end. So when we're slow, our doubts can come in, and we can be forgetful. Often, maybe if we're slow, maybe slow to speak kindly to somebody, or to praise somebody, or to pass on some kind words from others to somebody, we can completely forget about it. Life is busy. Our minds are busy. Life just sort of, as it were, well, it just continues, and we have habits towards unmindfulness and forgetfulness. And if we're not careful, the beautiful response that we had, ethically beautiful response we had towards that animal, that person, that group of people, if we're not quick, well, it never gets done. That love was never expressed. And this is, in my view, the great tragedy. Yeah? The love that you did feel the love, but it just was not expressed, was not expressed. And when we listen to ourselves, and we listen out, we look out for and listen for our noble and beautiful Kalyana responses to people and things, and we act upon it, we express it to a person. We express our appreciation to somebody. We express our awareness of their beautiful qualities, for example. When we express that, or we share a joke with somebody, we want to make them smile, we want to make them laugh, we want to share some humor with somebody. Well, something happens, doesn't it? You help, in a way, you help that person come alive. Yeah, beauty gives rise to beauty. Kindness gives rise to kindness. Love gives rise to love. So when you act on this noble urge or noble impulse, you're bringing to life something obviously that wasn't quite alive before, and well, something magical can happen. Yes, there's a meeting, there's a quality of connection, there's a quality of love that can just come into being. Well, that's a gift. That is the art, or part of the art of loving. And that gives me a cue to read from the book, Erich Fromm's book, The Art of Loving. Thank you, Naideepa. Erich Fromm writes, "In the act of giving, something is born, and both persons involved are grateful for the life that is born for both of them. Specifically, with regard to love, love is a power that produces love." Well, that's simply beautiful. Yes, it's beautiful to feel love. It's beautiful to express love, and it's beautiful to encourage a loving response in others. So I want to suggest a few areas of attention and practice in being quick to be quick to do what is admirable, to be quick to do what is good, to be quick to do what is morally beautiful. So there are many areas that actually don't take much time or energy. Some areas can take lots of time and energy, depending on what this noble, what this beautiful response was in the first place. But money occurs to me. Yes, well, I've mentioned it already. We can give small amounts of money to people. We can give people maybe people on the streets who might need a bit of money, or some food, etc. Or there might be an appeal, a money appeal for some project or some organization, etc. And we may have an instant response of wanting to give some money. And money is a very, very powerful thing. It's a very powerful thing we can use in the service of the Kalyana, in the service of the beautiful. Compliments is another very simple area of practice. We can be quick to give people beautiful compliments, not let it just slip by or say in a half-hearted way. Yes, we can mindfully, skillfully give people compliments straight away, if that's appropriate. Well, of course, we can share our appreciation and share our gratitude. Yeah, that usually doesn't take a lot of time or energy, but it's a wonderful way that we can strengthen our desire to be a loving presence in the world. Another area I've highlighted is apologizing. Yeah, some of us aren't very good at apologizing. Maybe pride gets in the way, or embarrassment gets in the way. Yes, we all make mistakes. Okay, we all, unfortunately, willingly or unwillingly hurt people by things that we do and things that we don't do. And finding ways to effectively apologize is a very, very beautiful and skillful thing to do. Yes, you might apologize with words, you might apologize with your behavior, you might do your best to make amends, yeah, and take responsibility. But apology is a very healing thing, a very positive thing. So we can be quick to apologize. If we wait sometimes 1 or 2 days or a few days, we may let our resistance or shyness or humiliation get in the way of that. Thanking people, well, that's similar to gratitude, but maybe not as strong as gratitude, but we can be quick to thank people. Yes, people do all sorts of things for us. They serve us in shops, or they make us food, or they listen to us, or they smile at us. Yeah, we can be quick in thanking people. I want to touch on another point, which I think is very important. Another aspect, I think, of strengthening the muscles, if you like, of Kalyana, strengthening, if you like, the muscles of beautiful speech, beautiful behavior, is the importance of nourishing ourselves. Yeah, it's very, very important that we find ways to nourish our heart, nourish our mind, and poetically speaking, to nourish our soul. That's really, really important. That just keeps us healthy. It keeps us alive, keeps us vital. And that's incredibly important, important way of being beautiful towards ourselves. And by being beautiful towards ourselves, we're much more able to be beautiful towards other human beings and even other animals. That's really important. And those of you who are on a spiritual path of one kind or another, it's also important to nourish our spiritual inspiration, to nourish our spiritual motivation. What really inspires you about the Dhamma? This is a Dhamma talk. What really inspires you about the Dhamma? And actually giving time and attention to that. If you do not fuel, if you do not feed your sources of inspiration, that is, from a Buddhist point of view, a form of laziness. You may be very, very busy in your life. You may be working 11 hours a day. You may be cooking and cleaning all the time. You may be seeing loads and loads of people. But if you're not nourishing your sources of spiritual inspiration, you're being lazy. You're being spiritually lazy. So a couple of ways. I mean, sometimes our impulses are very, very big, and we can't just give expression to them in 2 minutes or 5 minutes. If, for example, you have the desire to give somebody quite a bit of money in another country, that can take quite a lot of determination and decisiveness and planning. Yeah, that could take days. Maybe you don't have the money at the moment. Maybe you need to save up some money and then give the money to somebody else. because you want to, they're in a more difficult situation than you, and you want to help maybe their daughter to get maybe a year's of education. That might take a few weeks of careful planning. Yeah, so sometimes, it can take time, or you may have another desire that might take you 12 years to complete that. So some urges, some Kalyana can have major, long-term consequences, and that's great. We just need to be mindful and vigilant and work at it. Sometimes we can have lots of positive urges and impulses, and a really good way of just catching them is just writing them down. Maybe writing them, in my case, I've got a whiteboard. You could just write them in your notebook. Maybe you could write it after meditation. Many people experience generous creative urges and impulses in meditation. Maybe you could just write down one or two at the end. Or another good way to sort of to remember and to encourage the expression of the Kalyana is to tell somebody. Is to just tell whoever's with you. I had an urge to da-di-da-di-da-di-da to do this, and that can just sort of help you remember and be a form of stimulation and encouragement. So I'd like to share with you a few examples of people acting on their beautiful and creative impulses. The first was of myself at a Dharma talk, maybe 25 years ago at the London Buddhist Centre, and a very senior Dhammacharini, a woman order member, was giving a talk on generosity, and she gave the example that one morning, I think it was, she received, somebody slipped an envelope under her door with some money in it and with a little note. And the note said, "I noticed that your stockings had holes in it. Here's some money to buy some new ones." And she says, "I'm just practicing acting on my generous impulses." And when I heard this example, I was so happy. I was so inspired by it. It gave me like a whole rush of encouragement and confidence to act on the Kalyana, that very simple, very down-to-earth example. And my second example is also from the UK. We have a very senior male order member, Dharmachari, Ashvajit. In fact, he came here once and gave a public talk here once. He's now 81, but in the 1970s, shortly after he got ordained, he took a one-year vow that when anybody asks him for money, he will always give them money. It was a one-year vow. So that was his protection, if you like, about not being slow to do good. And on one occasion, I think it was one evening, he got on a train and a beggar came up to him asking for money. He opened his wallet and there's no change. There was no small amounts of money. He said all he had, this is the 1970s, remember, early 1970s, I think, he only had £10 notes. Now, £10 is probably about £50 now. That's about 1,000 tele in today's money. So he gave the beggar a £10 note. And the man, he fell on his knees and sort of put his hands in a sort of prayer position. He was just overwhelmed with gratitude. Apparently he didn't say much, but he was full of, I think he's full of wonder and gratitude. And that experience had a profound impact also on Ashvajit. It showed him, the power of generosity. I thought it's a very, very, wonderful example of someone being quick to do what is morally beautiful. And my third example is from Ankara, actually. It was from, I think it's in the first year of the pandemic, maybe the first 9 months. A friend of mine was just taking a walk, and next to her was a man on the phone. And the man was very, very emotional and very, very upset. In fact, he was, the way she put it, he was despairing. His mum was in hospital, and his mum had lots of needs, and he didn't have any money. For example, she needed pajamas, and my friend was she was eavesdropping, listening to him, and she was very strongly affected by this. And she had some negative thoughts that passed through her mind. She wondered if it was a scam. Is this a scam? And she thought, because she had an urge to give her all the money that she had to him. And she thought, is this a scam? And is this a method for exploiting people? And then eventually she thought, well, even if it is a scam, she wanted to give her money to him. So eventually, after I don't know how many minutes that she was listening to him, she got his attention and said, she got her purse out and said, please take this money. And he said, no, you can't do that. No, that's not good. No, please, I want you to have this money. So that was her, though she did have mixed thoughts, and even afterwards she thought, is it a scam, etc. But her, if you like, her noble self, her bigger self, acted with great generosity to that man. Now, I don't know how much money she gave him, but I think she gave him all the money that she had on her. I thought that was a really wonderful example. Now, if you take this practice seriously, if you take it to heart, take it really seriously, the practice of acting on your noble, your Kalyana responses to others, it can have what we could call an insight element. Because when you begin to express this Kalyana, this beauty, this beautifulness, you get more confidence. It can get quite wild. You can start having crazy, noble and skillful and beautiful responses that are outside convention, not normal or not conventional, not usual customs. You can express yourself. You might have, very loving responses to all sorts of people in all sorts of situations, in all sorts of strange ways. And it can challenge you. It could be scary. Yes, you could be embarrassed. And you'll have to grow. You'll have to, as it were, push past the resistance or the anxiety or the embarrassment. I'll just give you a small example. I mean, it actually took me days to do this. But I had the impulse. As many of you know, I have a very strong concern and care about the environment and the breakdown of the environment, and often use my sphere of influence to have a positive impact in that way. So I had the impulse of going to a neighbour 2 floors upstairs and asking her what kind of light bulbs they use. I was going to offer to replace all her light bulbs with ecological light bulbs. And I was, I often, quite regularly give her, bits of food. And if I'm going away and there's food left, I'll give it to her and she'll take it, etc. But for some reason, I was embarrassed, uncomfortable about this particular impulse. It took me days, actually. I was fairly slow to do what was morally beautiful. Eventually, I knocked on her door and I was uncomfortable. In fact, I said, what light bulbs do you use? And she said, as it happens, all her light bulbs were ecological. She says, and at the end, and I felt a bit silly, and at the end, she said, was that all you wanted to ask? I said, yeah, that's all I wanted to ask you. And I sort of shyly went off, etc. So it can challenge our sense of our ideas of what you think is normal, our ideas of who you think you are. Yes, it can be quite challenging, but in a positive and liberating kind of way. And of course, the other fundamental illusion that this will challenge, of course, is the illusion, the ignorance of separation. Yeah? If we're acting on our creative, loving, noble impulses, we will have more experience that separation is only a mind-made phenomena, is only a mental construct. It doesn't actually exist in reality. Yes, and we'll have more living experiences of this wholeness, of this intimacy, of this connection. So that's a very wonderful experience, of course. None of us want to feel lonely or isolated, and practicing in this way, we can experience ourselves more, if you like, more completely. We can experience ourselves wholly and connectedly. So I just want to remind you of those verses. I read those verses to you 3 times at the beginning, and I'm going to read them to you again now. One should make haste in doing good deeds. One should restrain one's mind from evil, for the mind of one who is slow in doing good tends to take delight in doing evil. Be quick in doing what's admirable. Restrain your mind from what's evil. When you're slow in making merit, evil delights the mind. Be quick to do what is morally beautiful. Restrain the mind from evil. They who are sluggish in doing good, their mind delights in evil. If you have an urge to share some happiness with a friend or a partner, if you have the urge to give a free workshop, if you have the urge to offer some of your time and skills to a cause that you believe in, if you have an urge to carbon offset for all the flying you did this year or last year, if you have the urge to discreetly pay for somebody's meal in a restaurant, if you have the urge to express your gratitude to a poet who's touched your heart, if you have the urge to apologize for your unkind speech, if you have the urge to call someone and thank them once again for something they gave you, if you have the urge to say good morning to a stranger in your neighborhood, if you have the urge to get trees planted, if you have the urge just to walk into a shop to tell them just how beautiful their shop display is, if you have the urge to pay somebody's gas bill, if you have the urge to offer help to someone carrying lots of shopping on the street, if you have the urge to tell someone how good they look, then I urge you to be quick to do what is morally beautiful. So we'll end there.